Madam President.
Oh, Senator from Texas.
Madam President, in a moment I'm going to propound a unanimous consent request. Before I do, I want to make some brief remarks. Right now, gas stations all over the eastern seaboard are suffering from a week-long gas shortage that has left thousands of stations completely out of gas. What we've seen is reminiscent of the 1970s, when Americans had to sit in long lines to fill their cars with gas. And why are we experiencing this crisis? Because Russian hackers attacked the Colonial Pipeline, which had to shut down operations on May 7th. And what is the reward Russia gets for attacking our infrastructure? Well, on the topic of Russia, just yesterday, President Biden doubled down on what is becoming a consistent soft on Russia position from the Biden administration, making the decision to disregard bipartisan legislation that passed through this body seeking to shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that Putin is desperately trying to complete between Russia and Germany. That pipeline had been shut down. We had succeeded in a bipartisan victory stopping that pipeline, but sadly, Putin resumed building the pipeline shortly after Joe Biden was elected. And yesterday, President Biden made the decision to refuse to enforce the bipartisan sanctions on the company building the pipeline for Putin. If that wasn't enough, it's clear the Biden administration does know how to shut down pipelines. The Keystone Pipeline, his first day in office, Joe Biden signed an executive order shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, destroying 11,000 jobs, including 8,000 union jobs, all destroyed by the Biden-Harris administration. For whatever reason, the Biden-Harris administration seems to have a philosophy that American pipelines and American jobs are bad, but Russian pipelines and Russian jobs are apparently good. And Russian hackers should get rewarded with Putin getting billions of dollars because Joe Biden refuses to stand up to Putin. The impact here at home of the Russian hacking. Colonial Pipeline transports 100 million gallons of fuel all over the East Coast every day. It's responsible for transporting 45% of the fuel on the East Coast, running from Texas to New Jersey. The Colonial Pipeline is a critical piece of infrastructure. And when it shut down, it gravely disrupted the daily lives of millions of Americans. Fuel for cars, for aviation fuel, for heating homes, all completely shut down. I'm standing here today because one thing this crisis has shown us is that we need to diversify how we transport energy in this country, so that if our critical infrastructure is attacked again, and we know it is going to be attacked again, that we have other reliable ways to transport energy. One way to strengthen redundancy, to strengthen our ability to make it through another attack, is to allow liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to be transported by rail. Last year, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Administration finalized a rule allowing the safe transportation of LNG by rail. What this rule does is enable natural gas that is used for transportation, that is used for generating electricity, for heating homes, for manufacturing, to be transported by railroad, which helps Americans in hard-to-reach areas access the fuel that they need. It also takes pressure off of other critical infrastructure to meet our energy needs. But now that Joe Biden is president, and he has empowered officials in his administration that have a repeated and demonstrated hostility to American pipelines and American jobs and American energy independence, this rule is in jeopardy. when the Secretary of Transportation was before the Senate for confirmation, I repeatedly asked the Secretary to commit to maintaining the existing rule allowing the safe transport of LNG by rail, and repeatedly the Secretary refused to make that commitment. Well, the foolishness of that position is now evident to everyone as we have gas lines and skyrocketing gas prices on the East Coast and throughout the country. Therefore, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Commerce be discharged from further consideration of S-1012 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Madam President, reserving the right to object.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I appreciate the points that my colleague from Texas is making, but the bill he is proposing to pass by unanimous consent has not been considered by the Commerce Committee, and it would drastically and unilaterally tie the hands of the Department of Transportation from protecting communities from having massive amounts of dangerous, explosive, liquefied natural gas shipped right through their towns and cities. I understand that Republicans and natural gas companies want to railroad through the Senate a bill that would undermine the safety of the railroads in our communities, but we just can't allow this to happen. In 2020, the Trump administration moved to allow trains of 100 or more cars to begin transporting liquefied natural gas with no additional safety regulations. They did this over the objections of the attorneys general of 15 states and the District of Columbia. Firefighters oppose it. Railroad unions that represent the railroad employees objected to it. Environmental community objected to it. And the National Transportation Safety Board. Listen to this. A train of 110 tank cars filled with liquefied natural gas would have more than 5 times the equivalent energy of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. We cannot put our firefighters, our railway workers, and our homes and families at risk from loose regulations on what could be catastrophically dangerous trains. Too many lives are at stake, and the Department of Transportation should have the ability to review this rule. But this bill that we're being propounded right now would blind our safety watchdog when we should be putting these threats under a microscope. Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.
Madam President, as the senator from Massachusetts knows, there is an existing rule that went through the ordinary process of finalizing a rule, the ordinary notice and comment process, that has been promulgated by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Administration. Senator from Massachusetts also knows the reality that accidents by rail are very rare. While we surely don't want to see any accidents occur or disruptions in transporting LNG by rail, what we've seen with the cyber attack on the Colonial Pipeline is that nothing is certain. There are risks to everything. But by taking precautions and diversifying our transportation methods for fuel, we make our energy industry more resilient to attacks and accidents when they predictably do happen in the future. Furthermore, LNG is already transported by vessel and tanker trucks and has been for decades. Obviously, accidents can happen at sea or with tanker trucks, but that doesn't stop us from transporting LNG in those ways. Accidents on railroads are rare, and if we can transport LNG by sea and in tanker trucks on the road, we should also be able to transport it by rail where it is safer and more efficient and more effective. Lastly, To cope with the shutdown, the Department of Transportation granted waivers for hour of service requirements to truck drivers and Jones Act waivers for vessels to continue to transport fuel and to try to alleviate the shortage. That just underscores the need for LNG by rail as well. Unfortunately, as Americans are standing in gas lines, the answer they are being given by Washington Democrats is the challenges you are facing don't matter to the Democrats. What we've seen from this objection is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support higher gas prices, much higher gas prices that you have to pay to the polls, pay at the pumps. And they understand that much higher gas prices fall disproportionately on low-income Americans, that they fall disproportionately on African Americans and Hispanics. But the Biden-Harris Democrats are willing to jack up your gas prices, to make you wait in line, and to say essentially, tough luck. They got no answers, but they're going to block getting energy for your home, for your vehicle, for your life, for your family. So we stand here today with a crisis at our southern border. So we stand here today with a gas crisis and gas lines. As we stand here today with an inflation crisis on the verge of erupting, and as we stand here today with war in the Middle East, sadly, we are seeing a reprise of the 1970s. The same failed policies producing the same disastrous results. Except in the rerun, Joe Biden is Jimmy Carter 2.0, and Kamala Harris is Walter Mondale. And the country, sadly, is paying the price for the extreme and failed policies, and we're just 4 months into it. I yield the floor.